Yes.
Can you talk something a little bit about Ho'oponopono technique or whatever it is?
Well, Ho'oponopono, is what we're talking about now, is an ancient Hawaiian technique of conflict resolution. And Ho'oponopono means to set things straight, to straighten things out. And it really meant the relationships. So it was used in ancient times with families for larger family groups, for use between chiefs, and even, at least in my family, as an individual means of healing as well. Because you were healing relationships. And it was essentially a kind of a process where some people have called it a family therapy. And I suppose you could call it that, but what the problem that they were there to solve was the problem of conflict. They weren't there to solve somebody's emotional issues. That would be solved only as it related to the conflict that was interfering with the proper functioning of the group. And there was a Haku, which means a leader. One translation is master, but it really means a leader. And it's the same, you know, for the term Hakule that people wear. Same term, Haku, you know, that was the head, that was the leader. And it was curious because in doing Ho'oponopono, you would always have to speak through the leader. Everybody had a chance to talk. Every member of the group had input. That was required. Okay? But that input always passed through the leader. Nobody talked to each other until the conflict was resolved. We can see how that would keep things more peaceful, because no shouting matches between people or insults or anything like that. Everybody who spoke had to speak in turn through the Haku. And then the Haku would look for opportunities to reconcile either the whole conflict, if possible, or pieces of it at a time until the whole issue was resolved. And that might include new behavior, forgiveness, confession, whatever was needed to help bring the resolution together.
Was this Haku the oldest or a special thing?
The Haku would be somebody who was respected, not automatically the oldest. It might be the head of the family. It might be a respected kapuna or kupuna or elder. It might be a kahuna from outside, or even one within the family who could take an objective viewpoint. They tried to find someone who was both a leader and as objective as possible in regard to the conflict. Yes?
I find the name Haku and Kahu very interesting. Is there a code in there?
There's a code in there. Kahu is another very important word. Has a couple of important meanings in the culture. It's part of the word Kahuna, and there's a lot of different ideas about how the word Kahuna is constructed. Because most of the words in Hawaiian are constructed out of roots that have relevant meanings. But Kahu by itself is either a guide or caretaker, and curiously enough, a cook, because it also means to cook. And this is why men were the cooks in old Hawaii. The men prepared the food and served it. Right? But a Kahu, I say guide and caretaker, those are English translations. If somebody went in, well, let's put it this way, every chief had a Kahu. Let's say you had a very important chief, or the high chief of the island. He would have a Kahu, and the Kahu was almost like a valet. He would help the chief with all of his personal stuff, but he would also, one of his responsibilities would be give him advice and guidance, and also keep him in physical shape. Like the Kahu of Kamehameha the Great, the king, first king of all the islands, had the power to make the king change his diet and exercise. Okay? He had that power. Okay? In other situations, a Kahu might be somebody who would guide you if you're the apprentice in certain kinds of work. Why, you might have a Kahu who would guide you through it. Not the same as an Alakai. An Alakai would be a leader. And the Alakai were leaders, let's say in a hula troop. You would progress through the hula troop as a novice, and then you would reach the point, maybe even what we might call a journeyman status, when you were pretty good and in the front of the line. And then at some point you'd be designated an Alakai, which means you were given a lot more responsibility for running of the halau and taking care of issues and things that had to do with the halau, as well as making sure that people were organized. Not taking them apart and teaching them necessarily. If you did that, you were acting more like a Kahu. As an Alakai, you were responsible for organization and leadership and that kind of thing.
Kahu was a man.
What's that?
Kahu.
Kahu was a man? Not necessarily. Yeah. You know, the Kahu could be a woman too.